This is the Goal Talk Podcast. All right, welcome to our first episode of the Goal Talk Podcast from WordStream. I am your host, Mikayla Wyman. I am on our marketing team. A lot of the podcast will be featuring different people throughout the entire WordStream organization. Today, I have with me two designers on our marketing team, Kate and Jed, and we're going to talk through the components that small businesses need to create a really great website that's going to work for them. So, Kate, would you mind introducing yourself and giving us a little bit more information about your role here?
So I'm Kate Lindsay. I'm the senior visual designer on WordStream's marketing team. I've been here for almost 3 years, kind of working more on the brand and visual design side, everything from our email campaigns or ad creative to the visual design aspects of the website.
Awesome. And since you've been here, your role has always been focused around, visual design, graphic design, or has it kind of changed since you've been here?
That's been the primary focus. When I joined, I was the first in-house designer, so just kind of building up the brand from some basic guidelines that existed and kind of translating that all across our marketing efforts.
Cool. That's really exciting. Jed, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Jed Robinson. I'm a UX designer on the marketing team, the web team specifically. UX stands for user experience, and I am basically responsible for making our site, like it sounds, the most user-friendly as possible, making the most enjoyable experience for the people who come to our site, and hoping they go through the correct funnel to become our customers.
Cool. And how long have you been at WordStream?
Just 3 months. So I'm a newbie here.
Well, welcome. From the different projects that we've all worked on as a marketing team and that we've worked on together and the different brainstorms that, the three of us have been involved in, there's some really exciting things happening on both the design and the UX side. So it's super exciting to talk to both of you. Today, we're really focusing on creating a website kind of from scratch and what small businesses need to think about and how they can execute on that. So one of the first things I really wanted to talk about was the essential components of a website. Then we'll kind of talk about, how we make those things happen, but getting kind of down to basics. If someone was to come to you and say, I need to create a website, I really want this to work for my customers and I want it to help me drive leads. What are some of the main bullet points that you would suggest?
I think to start, really think about what your goals are and what you're trying to achieve with the website. I think it's easy to get bogged down in the visual details really quickly without thinking about, okay, what am I actually trying to do here? Am I trying to gain more customers? Am I trying to raise brand awareness? Am I trying to drive more leads to a specific area or a specific tool? Kind of figure out what those goals are first and then prioritize them, and that will help you kind of go from there.
Yeah. So taking a step back and trying to figure out, what you as a business are trying to accomplish, whether it's sell a software, sell products, or give information, and then optimize for that. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, definitely. And, also just thinking about, WordStream, we try to be very customer focused. So thinking about your actual customers, or if you don't have customers yet, who you want your customers to be, and try and look from their perspective, or, interview them even if you're able.
Cool. Yeah. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think Kate answered that really well. I think one of the most important things that we do here is try to talk to our customers and really look at it from their point of view and see what type of people they are, what backgrounds they come from, where in the world they're coming from, so we can really gear our site towards what is going to, push their buttons, what is going to make them, click on ours. And I also think one of the most important things is also focusing after, you've come up with your goals and your customers' goals is coming up with some great content. Like Kate said, you can really get bogged down on the design side. And a lot of people, business owners who need a website, aren't designers, aren't developers, but what they can control is the content, and other people can make it look pretty.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, that's really helpful. I know for me, one of the first things that I would do is figure out, again, just exactly like you guys said, figure out what I'm trying to accomplish. But then from there, how I would accomplish making that happen. So for a small business that might have 1 to 2 people working there, or a single marketer, where do you suggest that they go first? Do you think that they should hire someone, hire a service, do something on their own? What do you kind of think is the best route?
I think it really depends on what type of business you are and what type of resources you are. There's a lot of great tools out there, Squarespace, WordPress, that someone who doesn't have really any experience doing design or development can just basically use a template and build out a site that is visually appealing and follows, best practice guidelines that these sites have come up with. And then there's also a route that you could go. If you have more resources, you can hire a team to build a website, or someone to do a more custom design on a Squarespace or a WordPress or a Wix. So I think there's a lot of options that people can look into when they have really no resources. And I think the bigger your team is, maybe the more resources you have, you can think about, hiring a web developer or a web designer to do that for you.
Yeah, I think if you're just starting out as a small business and just trying to get things off the ground, start with something that's like an out-of-the-box solution, like a Squarespace or whatever. Because if you want to think long-term, like, you can hire a developer to get you up and running. But you've got to consider how easy is it going to be for you to maintain without having to ping that person for help on updating content and managing that. And, if you're using a content management system like Drupal or whatever, there's like security updates that have to happen frequently. So using something that's more of an out-of-box solution will kind of get around that and be a lot easier for you to maintain.
And do those out-of-the-box solutions usually contain content management systems, or is that something that you would have to add in?
So those are usually part of it. That's kind of, they are content management systems, basically, just with like more robust design features than something like a Drupal, which is very developer and technical focused.
So they have more, Jed, as you said, more templates and things that you can actually build that will adhere to best practices, but also make it look like maybe it was engineered by someone who has more experience?
Yeah, so one of the great things about these website builders, I personally, in my freelance work over the years, have done a lot of Squarespace sites where, I could build a site from there from scratch, or you could go in and do a template. And the great thing about these is that it's really just kind of implementing the content you want, and you don't need to always go back to the person who maybe built it for you to change this content. It's really easy, really simple. They also have great tools, like Squarespace is great analytics already involved, marketing campaigns. So there's a lot of kind of template stuff, website builder stuff out there that has all these great additive tools as well.
I swear this isn't a paid advertisement for Squarespace. There are a lot of like really awesome free tools out there, but they're one of them.
Yeah, I feel like they're one of the bigger known brands.
Yeah.
But I mean, I know I've in the past seen people work with Wix. Are there some other really big ones?
WordPress is another big one. Those are kind of the main ones that I've been hearing out there. There's definitely some others, but those are, I'd say, the big 3. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. So one thing that we touched on was identifying some goals. And I think that lends really well to a conversation about how we can get people to accomplish those goals once they get to your website. So, you use a solution, you build your website. There are a few more things that I'm sure going to need to do before your site goes live, and I'm sure we'll touch on those as well. But how do you guys approach figuring out what the call to action should be and where that gets placed on the actual website to be successful?
Yeah, that's a lofty question.
hitting them with the big questions
Yeah.
early on.
I mean, in my opinion, I think in terms of deciding what your main call to action should be and with the goals that you have is really that's you can learn a lot about that in doing user interviews and user research and actually talking to your potential customers. Half of it is, what is your business trying to do? What is your main goal that you are trying to sell, or what is the main piece of information that you're trying to get people to download, or whatever it may be? And the other half of it is why your customers need it or would benefit it from. So for instance, WordStream is going to help customers with their online advertising, and that's going to allow the customers to save more money and spend more time doing other things to grow their business.
Right. So our main CTA would be something along the lines of, sign up for a trial or learn more about the software, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think to like Jed's point about doing a lot of user testing, where that's really valuable is we did some user testing on our pricing page, a couple months back, might have been actually a year ago at this point, but a lot of the feedback we got was that our start your free trial call to actions were too high on the page because people didn't feel like they had a good enough sense about what the product was or what the features were. So that customer feedback or prospect feedback is incredibly valuable there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another thing that's as a user, if I end up on somebody's website and they either don't have a call to action or don't have a way for me as a prospect to get to the next step or to contact somebody, I'm immediately out and I can find someone else, because chances are I went to this page from either a link on an ad or within the search engine results page. And if I'm in that area, either I have intent and there are other companies that are kind of listed on that SERP that I can also just go and click on, or I'm just browsing and I see a compelling ad and I click on it. And then if they don't have that option, I'm immediately out. But if there's a lot of really valuable information right on that website or on that landing page with a prominent call to action that identifies with what I'm looking for, that's kind of a no-brainer for me to take the next step. So I think, as to your point, figuring out what your customers are there for and what they want to do next, and then kind of crossing those paths together.
Yeah, I think what's really important with that is just shouting it out on your site. When people get there, like you said, you might be coming from another link, or some people might be going there directly, but a lot of times they're looking for something and they don't know exactly how you can help them. And just really telling them right away once they get there, this is what we do, this is how we can help. And, another thing that can help there is a visual aspect of it as well, something that is engaging and tells a story about how you can help your customers.
Yeah. Along those lines, are you thinking something like a testimonial or maybe a product photo?
Yeah, any of those. I mean, product photos are great. They show your potential customers what you're selling them and what it looks like. And testimonials, there's no one better to hear what your company can do for someone than someone that you've helped.
For sure.
I think another important part of kind of determining the call to actions on a page too is just making sure that you have a specific focus or are kind of able to visually prioritize the actions that you want people to take. You can kind of slap 20 buttons on a homepage and hope for the best. But a lot of the times that's giving users too many potential decisions or actions that they could take. And inevitably that ends up they take no action, or they take an action that you didn't want them to. So, you can visually prioritize things either by scale or changing the color or differentiating them somehow. It's okay to have different actions, but make sure that you're setting some sort of visual hierarchy.
Yeah. And so the actions that you want them to take the most are the most prominent.
Exactly.
Or the higher up on the page, or the largest.
Right.
Something like that.
Precisely.
And a lot of times you'll see on sites, they'll make the first action the highest up on this page, and also sometimes finish the page with that action as well. So, people inherently scroll. So when they get to the bottom, having that kind of same or similar action that you want people to take on the bottom there as well can help.
And how can you differentiate? Is there like a name for what the different call to actions could be or the buttons could be on a site, like that one that you have at the top and then repeats at the bottom? Is there like a name for that?
Not that I'm aware of. I just, kind of primary, secondary. It's
Primary, CTA,
Yeah.
secondary.
Primary and secondary, yeah.
Okay, cool. Any other elements other than your call to action, your content, identifying the goals of your actual site? Are there any like primary aspects of a website that people need to have? Like I've seen blog sites as an additive. I've seen about pages, contact pages. Like, are those all necessary when you're starting out, or are those something you kind of build on?
I think it's different for every company what pages are necessary. I think really thinking out, what your goals are to come up with a site navigation that allows your users to get to all these pages, whatever they might be, whether it's a products page, whether it's an about page. That's all kind of determined based on what type of company you are. I think it's nice when people go to a site and they can click about and see what you do and why you do it. But definitely if there's something you're trying to sell or there's information that you think is extremely important, having that accessible is the main goal. It would depend on what type of company it is to know what exactly these pages are or what the content is, but yeah.
So most important would be identifying what the different pages you need are and then being able to navigate to those pages. So like navigation.
Yeah. Being able to navigate to those pages from the top, and then also as you kind of scroll through the site, having the main information that you want people to know on that homepage, so they can, land on your homepage and then get to the other parts of the site as they scroll.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say I think having something like an about page or a company page or whatever you want to call it is pretty important. Just in terms of building like trust and authority and looking like a legitimate business, it's good for people to like look at that and say, oh, these people have been around for a little while, or these are who these people are. Even if you're just starting out, it's good to know that there are humans behind the business.
And maybe an understanding of why they're choosing to create this business or who they're trying to help and what their goals are.
Exactly.
Cool. Yeah. I think as a consumer, it would be really important, whether the website was B2B focused or B2C focused, just understanding who the people are that are behind the offer and why they think that it's important and why they're passionate about bringing that to the world.
Exactly. Yeah. Sometimes you go in an about section of a site and you really see, a story that you weren't expecting where someone was personally affected by something and they've made it their life goal to, help make a change in an area or go ahead and start a company. I mean, there's a lot of companies with really great backstories that you wouldn't know unless you went to an about section.
And those are things like you can definitely use to differentiate yourself as a brand too. If you've got a really compelling story that will resonate with people or just make you stand out from the next person who might be doing a very similar product or service offering, is great and it makes you more human.
Yeah. And I think that about or company page is a really great place to, while giving more information about why you're starting that company and why you're trying to solve that problem, adding in the mission statement there is kind of a really good place for that to live. Do you guys agree?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. So one thing that I've always been a little confused about is the whole domain web hosting server situation. I interact with the website a lot, but I personally have never built a website. So can you just give me some more information? Like once you determine that you want to make a website, how do you go about finding a domain, purchasing that domain? What's the difference between a domain and a server? Stuff like that. That's a lot of things to answer. So maybe we start with domain.
I mean, big picture, maybe an easier way to think about all this is like your server is like your house or your home. and the domain would be like your mailing address, how you get to that place. It's where your server's where everything lives, but the domain is actually how people get there.
Interesting. So your domain is the ad, like the actual web address that you type in or that all of your ads locate to. But then your server is where all of your pages are stored.
Exactly.
Cool. Got it.
All your pages, all your images, files, etc.
Any media is stored there too. So like if we were to embed like a video or something like that.
Embedding's slightly different because that's like another beast where like you can host things on YouTube or Vimeo or whatever, and that's like an external, like your video is being hosted on a different server, and you're just embedding that into your website.
Got it. But if you wanted to actually have it live on that website, it would be on that server.
Yes,
Okay.
Exactly. Yep.
Cool. I get it. Anything you want to add?
No, that's she pretty much hit the nail on the head. In terms of, finding a domain, I think it's important to, if you can't find, if your domain name for your company is already taken, say your company is dogreatthings.com, but dogreatthings.com already exists, finding a name that is still recognizable for what you do, and people are going to, not have a hard time, interpreting what it is if you're not going to make it do bad things because that's the only thing closest to it. But you're going to be able to find basically if these domains are available. Usually a search on something like GoDaddy will tell you what domains are available. It will give you a list of domains that are similar, and then also how much they cost per year.
And if you're going to an out-of-the-box solution like Squarespace or whatever, a lot of those will have domain hosting as part of their package, and you don't even have to worry about setting all that up separately. It's just
super
there.
Helpful.
Yeah.
Cool. And the first thing that I thought of when you were talking about if the company name is not available as a domain name, a really good example of this is, have you guys heard of the Quip toothbrushes?
Yeah.
So they do a lot of like electric toothbrushes that they send directly to you, and then they have a subscription for toothbrush heads and accessories and stuff like that. And I recently got one, which is how I know about them, but their website name is getquip.com instead of quip.com, because I assume quip.com goes to something else. But yeah, it's interesting to think about in the age of how the internet itself has progressed. There's so many pages that, finding a really good domain name might be difficult. Do you find that that's the case?
I think it depends on what you want your domain name to be. I mean, if it's something extremely common, there's a good chance that it's already taken. But at the same time, it's not always impossible to get a domain name from somebody else. Sometimes they'll tell you can spend this much to kind of get that domain. And at the same time, there's also, you can do, instead of .com, you can do .net, like .us. There's a bunch of different somethings now that you can also go that route.
I've seen companies before where they've done, there's a conference in the programmatic space called Programmatic.io, and their domain is like prog.io, which is cool. It's like a fun way to still recognizable that it's Programmatic.io, but it's like their website isn't programmatic.io.com,
Yeah, this is exactly why my personal URL is katelindsay.design and not katelindsay.com, because I was beaten to the punch by a jewelry designer somewhere in the US.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally makes sense. So again, talking about how large the internet is, now we're coming up on 2020. I'm sure you've seen your fair share of good websites and bad websites. But I think it would be really useful to hear some of the, things that you've seen that are really not great elements, or, design elements, or just general web elements that you've seen that really just turn you off immediately, or you're just like, ugh.
Yeah, this is a tough question because I think design can be so subjective to some people. Obviously, there are best practices that are a little more objective, but what resonates with me or doesn't resonate with me might be completely different from what resonates with Jed. For me personally, too much visual clutter, colors that clash. Just thinking recently, I was looking at a travel website that just had like way too much information on the homepage to the extent that it made it look like not trustworthy, almost because it felt so outdated and kind of like, 1997 GeoCities-ish.
Yeah, that can be stressful.
Yeah.
I've definitely seen those. And then the little thing at the bottom, sometimes there's like a date stamp at the bottom of a website that says the last time it was updated. And if it says a year that's sooner than like 2010, but still looks like that, I'm nervous.
Yep.
Anything for you?
Yeah, I mean, the trends that are in right now, I mean, minimalistic design is a big one. Like Kate was saying, not cluttering your site with too much visual aspects, not having too many different colors. If you have great content, you want to have people focus on your content and not have them be, distracted by other elements of the site, like having, the entire rainbow in your site of just different colors all over the place, or having, images that are extremely in your face, or a different style of image for each different image. So I think consistency is key in your visual elements. And what is a trend right now might not be a trend in, a year from now or even less. But I think people are moving a lot towards minimalistic design, and just trying to keep the focus on the actual content.
Yeah.
I think too, if you're stuck with like the color palette concept and aren't really sure where to go with that, if you don't already have kind of an established color palette for your brand, there are so many great free tools out there. Like I used to use Color Lovers, color with an U, like the British spelling, and they have a ton of like really great color palettes for inspiration. There's Adobe Cooler, I believe. There's like so many of them right now that are kind of good, helpful starting points.
Yeah, and I think along the same vein, something that just kind of follows, I would think, is being really consistent with any imagery or visuals that you use off your website and making sure that that's consistent on your website. So if you're in ads or in, any of your like product promotions, if you're using actual images over using animations or like sketches, I would think that being consistent with those things on your site would lend more to the transparency and trust aspect. But then also, establishing a brand palette, I think, is really, really useful. How do you feel about font?
I mean, I have a lot of feelings about fonts. Web fonts are interesting because they've come pretty far from like when I was, building websites in 8th grade or whatever. So, there used to be like kind of a very strict set of web safe fonts, which included, Arial and Verdana and, Comic Sans. But now there's a lot of great resources like Google Fonts or Google Web Fonts that are totally free and pretty easy to implement, and a lot of them are also incorporated into these Squarespace hosting tools. But with that said, it's kind of like a double-edged sword, because now all of a sudden there's all of these options, and how do you know where to start? And it's easy to get kind of carried away and use like 20 different fonts on your page. My general rule: try to stick to like 2 typefaces. And maybe like 2 or 3 different weights. Like keep it pretty simple, because otherwise it's gonna look a little crazy pants.
And for those of us less design inclined, what do you mean by weights?
Yes, sorry, I realized that after I said that might not be super obvious. So that's like your normal font weight, like your just standard font or bold. if you look on Google Fonts, there's like some of them have like 9 different weights. So you can go from like very, very light and kind of skinny to like a very heavy, thick font. Try not to use too many of those because it'll look very not cohesive.
Yeah. So it's fine, like one standard and then maybe like a bold or a thin.
Yeah. I mean, so a way you could think about that, like maybe you have one font and one weight for that font that you use as like your headlines, and then a different font that you use for just like body text and paragraphs.
Yeah, and to that point, along with weight, font size, keeping that consistent is also really important. You want all of your, body text to be the same size. If you have captions, trying to keep those the same size, and your headers. I think we have about 4 headers in our 6? Five. Yeah, 5. 5 headers. So we use those in different places on our site. And so we try to stick to those brand guidelines of our header 1 is always going to be a certain size versus header 2 is going to be a certain size and a certain weight. And keeping those as consistent as possible is also going to help.
Yeah, and WordStream has an incredibly large website. So 5, I feel like, is a lot for the amount, very few for the amount of pages that we have. Would you agree with that, or should it be less?
I think for the size of the site we have, I think it's right. You don't want to have too many different fonts on your site, and it keeps things, again, consistency is key for every aspect of your site. I would say 5 is about right. If you have a lot smaller site or you don't have that many pages, you don't need 5. You can get away with 2 or 3. So I think it depends on all the different content types you have, how many pages. It's just you want to keep that specific. So a certain font for a specific content type.
Awesome. Cool. And then we've talked about a lot of bad things that we've seen and some best practices. Do any like more fun or more essential design types or user experience elements that you've seen recently, anything kind of jump out with and stick out to you? I know you guys have been looking at a lot of different websites.
Yeah, I mean, I really think certain things like interactive designs, which are, basically allowing your user to click through. If you're building it on a site builder like WordPress or Squarespace, it's going to be more difficult. Interactive designs are a little bit more complicated, maybe not for, beginners.
Yeah, these are more like fun to have, more advanced features.
Right. It's just it improves the user's experience throughout the site. It brings them joy. It gets them clicking on the site. But allowing people to click through different aspects, whether it's a more simple thing that is definitely possible on site builders like slideshows, or having little simple animations when you scroll, having your text come in from the right. Those are really simple things that you can do that can help, but at the same time you don't want to overdo it and distract your user with it.
Text flying around everywhere.
Exactly.
I can just see, we stuck to the 3 different text types and sizes, but they have them flying in everywhere. Could be interesting.
Yeah, I think also just at like a super basic level, make sure you're using, like, if you don't have a designer, make sure you're using really quality stock photos and illustrations. There are a lot of really great, even free resources out there now for good quality stock photos. So things like Unsplash, they have a lot of it's kind of like more lifestyle kind of focused stock photos, which look a lot more natural than like, your businessman in a suit giving a thumbs up.
Or a really happy woman eating a salad.
Yeah, that's the kind of the joke these days. And some of that will come from determining what your brand is and how you see yourself and how you want the world to see you. So maybe like Salad Woman is how you want to project yourself to the world, and that's great, and that's your brand. But I think if you're going for a more contemporary, modern look, utilize those resources.
Yeah, and then even along those lines, I think there's a huge opportunity to, it's not like hiring someone out, but like if you want to incorporate more of your brand images, but you don't have those existing, hire a freelance photographer to get some product photos or some really great screenshots of if you have like an online service or something like that, just to kind of add in some personalized aspects.
Absolutely. And I can tell you those freelancers are going to appreciate you hiring them. They're trying to build their portfolios as well. And a lot of them do really great work that can help your brand. And another great thing that you can add into your website, videos. Not many people are using videos currently. It's definitely a growing trend, but that can also really bring personalized touch behind what you're doing. You can have, a video testimonial of a client talking greatly about you, or your team telling potential clients what you do and why you do it. So I think that's another great way to get people kind of interacting with your site through video.
Or even like that gets me thinking, if I were an e-commerce company, even like video products of like if I was selling shoes, like a video of someone walking down the street or something like that could be a really great way to make you identify more with them, because maybe either you identify with the shoe, seeing it, you identify with the person wearing the shoe, or you just kind of like to see them in action type thing.
Yeah, they can be a great way to tell a story throughout your site.
Cool. And I know we kind of touched on this earlier, but would you suggest, if you have video elements, would you suggest hosting them on the actual server that you're using, or would you suggest embedding them and hosting them elsewhere? Does that at all impact site speed?
That's probably a little beyond my scope of like knowledge to an extent. I mean, I know probably millions of people are using YouTube to embed videos on their website, and it's probably pretty safe to use that, especially if you're just starting out. I think like the advantage maybe to hosting it on your own platform is you might be able to customize the experience a little bit more. So if you're using like HTML5 video, you can kind of change the styling a little bit more and make it feel more like embedded. But that's like really high level stuff that's not really necessary.
Yeah.
And then on certain site builders, instead of embedding, you can also, if your video is like a banner video, on the top of your homepage, you can have that embedded through the actual like site builder, and not go through YouTube or like Wistia, which we use a lot.
Cool. Awesome. So we did talk a bit about user testing, and how important that can be to creating a really beneficial website for accomplishing both yours and your prospects' goals. How would you go about finding people to be a part of that? Are there services that you can use, or, are you actually going out there and trying to understand, ask questions like in the wild type thing?
I think there's a lot of different ways, and this is a constant struggle for designers and companies in general to get users to either come in and test or just go out and find people to test. There are places you can go. Usertesting.com is one where you can send out surveys and get people to user test, and you write a little ad of what you're looking for, and people respond. But a great way that I've done it in the past is, go to a Starbucks if you're looking for just someone to go through your site or do a quick test and say, hey, can I buy you your coffee if you spend 15 minutes with me? Or so there's a lot of different ways you can do it. There's a lot of different services that will help you find it. And then also a great way is if you have clients who you've helped are a lot of times going to be willing to help you back. So there's a lot of different avenues you can go. People friends, family. It really just, I guess, depends on what you're trying to test for.
I think if you're looking for like actual customer feedback too, make sure you're offering them something in return for helping you, whether that be a gift card or, a discount off of some service or whatever. Because they'll be more inclined, I think, to help you and give you that information.
Yeah. I really like the Starbucks example. That's a really cool way to, especially if you're a small business that's just starting out and trying to figure out, how to position your website and how you should do that. There are a lot of people that would be really excited to be a part of that experience. Even if they're like students or, people kind of working on something in Starbucks, and, could be a really cool way.
Right. And if you're going that route, there's definitely different ways to go about it. I worked on a project once about daydreaming, and we had 2 groups of 2 going out and asking people on the streets if they would talk to us. My group went out and we phrased it, "Hey, do you have a second to talk about daydreaming?" And everybody, wanted to talk about daydreaming, but the other group phrased it, "Hey, we're students doing research on this project about daydreaming," and they got almost nobody. So it really, I think, depends how you're phrasing the question that you're asking to get people's involvement as well.
Yeah. Cool. Really, really helpful and insightful stuff. Is there anything else that you guys want to touch on or that you think is really important for small businesses to know when trying to develop their website and make it as efficient and useful for customers as possible?
I would say that it's building a website and maintaining a website is a never-ending process. You can get it to a place where you're going to be happy with it, and it can last you a long time. But a lot of times you see sites that were once great are now, they're a little obsolete because they're not on trend, and content's constantly changing. The market's constantly changing. So it is something that is something that you can always be working on. And as well, you want to get users' feedback and your customers' feedback on what is working and why it's working. And analytics can help you determine a lot of the things that are working, but talking to people is always the best way.
I think, too, don't undervalue the importance of having a good website. At first, it can probably seem very daunting and time-consuming and expensive to build a website, but it's absolutely worth the investment. And for a lot of people, that's going to be kind of your front door, their experience to your business. And definitely invest in good design and development as you're able to.
Right. Yeah. Sorry. There's a few stats out there, like 75% of people make a decision on a company based on their website, which is huge. And another stat that 95% of people make a decision on a website based on the design and how it looks. So to Kate's point, it's really important to invest in these things.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, it is a daunting task. And even if it is, even if it's not like the first thing that they interact with on your brand, ultimately that's where all of the conversions or all of the actions take place. So whether they're going to be getting there from an ad or from a social media post or from the search engine's result page, whatever avenue they do, take to get to your website, it's your kind of first impression that they're going to get into your brand. So I do think it's, a really important gateway into the experience that they'll get with you. And one of the reasons that we had this as our first episode, because it's kind of the first thing that you need to kind of tick the box of in order to get started and be successful as a small business. So great. Thank you guys so much for joining me today and being a part of this discussion. Thanks. Please don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Goal Talk Podcast to keep, engaged with us and discuss kind of what you are looking for to hear next. And we'll talk to you at the next episode. Bye.